The fourth way. The fourth way is a term used to refer to a body of teachings and practices with roots in the work of G.I. Gurdjieff, 1866 to 1949. Gurdjieff, born in Armenia, is a bit of an enigma and controversial figure, but writings about his life consistently report that he studied various schools of religious and philosophical thought as a youth and traveled extensively as a young adult throughout the East, reportedly areas of Central Asia and the Middle East, in search of spiritual truths. He then returned to Russia and began sharing what he had learned and experienced. He developed the fourth way as a path of self-transformation that integrated singular paths of the body, the fakirs of Sufism, mind, the yogis of Hinduism, and emotions, the monks of Christianity, that he studied and encountered in his travels. Shortly after he returned to Russia, Gurdjieff met P.D. Opensky, who became one of his most well-known pupils until they parted ways in 1918. Opensky then relocated to England and became a teacher of the fourth way in his own right, through lectures and writings. Gurdjieff, whose life was greatly impacted by social upheavals and military conflicts, revolutions and World Wars I and II, traveled and taught in Germany, England, and France throughout the 1920s and 1940s, and visited the United States during that period as well. He had 2 serious and life-threatening auto accidents during this period, but recovered from both. Gurdjieff died in France in 1949. Overview of the system. While the most recent study and practice of the 3 systems covered in this chapter, I find the fourth way teachings powerful and highly supportive of self-transformation. Similar to the other 2 systems of self-transformation highlighted here, the fourth way posits that majority of people live in mechanical or sleep states. Consequently, most of humanity resides in lives of quiet desperation, filled with suffering and destructive habitual patterns of thinking, speaking, and acting. According to the fourth way in many systems of self-transformation, this fundamental infirmity of man, referenced by the founder of psychosynthesis, Roberto Assagioli, is so because we do not remember who we are and why we are here, because of long-standing dysfunctional patterns, particularly over-identification, negativity, and internal considering, blocking self-remembering or self-awareness. Over-identification is a fundamental obstacle to self-remembering and occurs whenever we lose ourselves to an identity, such as a belief, a characteristic, a demographic, for example, race, gender, or political affiliation, personality, or role. Over-identification occurs so unconsciously and quickly that most of us are completely unaware when, which is most of the time, we are stuck in over-identification. Indications of being in a state of over-identification include feelings of defensiveness, anger, resentment, self-pity, and self-indignation. When over-identified, one can easily feel that they are in a constant state of attack, which locks us into a toxic state of negativity. Negativity refers to thoughts, emotions, words, and actions that constrict our minds and hearts and cause harm to ourselves and others. Negativity is so toxic because it infects our inner and outer environments and locks us into destructive patterns. Negativity closely aligns with over-identification and internal considering. Internal considering refers to a degree of self-absorption and narcissism that sees life only from the impact events will have on oneself, with little or no concern for the impacts events may have on others or our planet. The consequences of living in a deep state of sleep and being trapped in over-identification, negativity, and internal considering include misery, suffering, loss of energy and power, a sense of disconnection from oneself, others, and God, spirit, or light, and ultimately, violence. Core practices. To begin to awaken from sleep and cultivate self-awareness requires self-observation, the main transformative practice associated with the fourth way. Writings and teachings of the fourth way offer numerous practical exercises to cultivate self-observation, including an activity frequently referred to as divided attention. Divided attention instructs aspirants to periodically place attention on their inner experience and outer experience of a select phenomenon. For example, as a practitioner enters a doorway, he or she would place attention on an aspect of their internal experience, for example, thoughts, bodily sensations, or feelings, as well as an aspect of their external experience as experienced by the five senses. Repeated practice of such exercises builds one's capacity for self-awareness such that over time, the practitioner can eventually use divided attention in more challenging life circumstances, for example, an interpersonal conflict, thereby increasing the likelihood of constructive social interactions and outcomes. Other self-observation exercises such as stop and working with internal considering direct seekers to periodically pause their activities and honestly check themselves for internal negative or self-absorbed states while noting related consequences. Essential to all self-observation exercises is an objective and non-judgmental attitude toward all noticings or observations. A non-judgmental attitude toward one's observations allows a healthy disidentification from them as well as an expanding psychological space in which to choose more constructive states from which thoughts and actions can arise. Over time, sensitivity to and dislike of negative states and attraction to positive states act as motivational forces for the ongoing relinquishment of lower or negative states in favor of more positive states.